are watching.
Presented by eBix Cash. हर खुशी के लिए काफी है. Co-presented by Coin DCX, your gateway to crypto. Co-powered by Green Lamb Laminates, Gustakhi Saaf.
Hello and welcome. You're with us here on Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the headlines tonight. Market ends lower after a volatile session. Sensex Nifty logging losses for a second day. Metal, oil and gas stocks gain. Banks drag behind. Z shares surge over 16% after its largest shareholder Invesco drops EGM demand. Stock gains the most in about 6 months. EdTech company Byju's has been announced as the official sponsor of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. Byju's is now the first Indian firm to be associated with the World Cup. Patanjali-backed Ruchi Soya's 4,300 crore rupee follow-on public offer hits capital markets. FPO subscribed 12% on day one. We'll get you exclusive conversation with Baba Ramdev on company's expansion plan later on the show. Well, another choppy session on Dalal Street. Benchmarks took a beating as a surge in global crude oil prices and tensions between Ukraine and Russia remained unabated. Sensex gyrated 690 points intraday before settling at 57,596. That's down 89 points. The Nifty, on the other hand, ended at 17,223, down 23 points. The broader markets, on the contrary, held their ground and outperformed the headline indices. Financials were a major drag today, with 4 of the top 5 Nifty losers from the financial sector. Kotak Mahindra Bank, HDFC, ICICI and HDFC Bank, some of the top laggards. Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo Pharma leading the Nifty Pharma Index. Dr. Reddy's, in fact, the top Nifty gainer, up nearly 5%, followed by Coal India, Ultratech Cement, Hindalco and JSW Steel. While markets are in turbulent waters for now, in the past 2 years, bulls have been on a rampage on Dalal Street. The charge commenced after a huge crash owing to the uncertainty brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Nifty, which had plummeted the most in a single day, hit a low of 7,500. 2 years from that black day, Nifty has now breached the 17,000 mark. Sensex too defying gravity to reach 60,000 from 50,000 in just 245 days. In fact, Nifty has performed better than its global peers in the past 2 years. Even among emerging markets, Nifty has defied all odds to reach the top. India's market cap has touched a whopping $3.3 trillion, up over 150% from COVID lows. In fact, since the pandemic hit, there's been an exponential rise in the number of new investors heading to Dalal Street. While just 49 lakh new demat accounts were opened in the years 2019-20, a whopping 142 lakh new accounts were opened in the financial year 2021. But the figures from this year beat them all. In this fiscal so far, 317 lakh new traders have jammed Dalal Street. Now let's take a look at how sectors have performed in the past 2 years. Nifty Metal, IT, Energy, Realty and Infrastructure have been the top 5 performers, rallying between 130 to 323%. While in the past 2 years, investors have filled their pockets with gains from Dalal Street, the volatility due to geopolitical tensions, rising inflation has led to a sea of red in the past few days. Is the market correction here to stay? Ruchi Soya's 4,300 crore rupee follow-on public offer opened for public participation today. A total of 35% of the issue is reserved for retail investors and another 15% for high net worth individuals. Ahead of the FPO, the company raised 1,290 crore rupees from anchor investors. The offer is entirely a fresh issue of shares. The company was bought by Patanjali Ayurved after going through insolvency. Most analysts tracking Ruchi Soya Industries FPO said that investors can apply for shares with a long-term view, given the price band is at a significant discount. Our managing editor Siddharth Zarabi spoke exclusively to Baba Ramdev on the FPO, expansion plans and where Baba Ramdev said that his first goal is to make Ruchi Soya debt-free. Listen in.
आपने लोगों को अपने स्वास्थ्य सुधारने के लिए योग और श्रम का एक प्रकार से पथ सिखाया। अब आप रुचि सोया का स्वास्थ्य सुधार रहे हैं। ऐसी रुचि आप में क्यों आई कि रुचि सोया जैसी एक कंपनी का स्वास्थ्य सुधारें हम?
बीमारों का इलाज करना हमारा काम है और इसलिए सिद्धार्थ भाई एक बीमार कंपनी का भी हमने इलाज किया, उसका टर्नओवर किया, करीब डबल टर्न अराउंड किया, उसमें प्रोफेशनल मैनेजमेंट, कॉर्पोरेट पूरा गवर्नेंस और पूरा का पूरा एक जिसको कहते हैं ना ट्रांसपेरेंसी, अकाउंटेबिलिटी, प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी, हर चीज़ को हमने उसको एक लेवल पर लेकर के आए। और इसीलिए जो एक बीमार कंपनी थी उसका चलो टर्नओवर बढ़ाना, उसको करीब दुगुणित कर देना और उसके साथ उसका जो एबिटा था उसको भी कई गुना बढ़ा देना साधारण बात नहीं होती है
जी।
और निरंतरता के साथ उसको एक मेंटेन करना
जी।
बिना रिस्क मैनेजमेंट के साथ, क्योंकि ऑयल जो कमोडिटी वाला बिजनेस होता है इसमें इंपोर्ट पर बहुत डिपेंडेंसी है, करीब 65% ऑयल बाहर से आता है, तो उसको भी रिस्क मैनेजमेंट के साथ उसको लेकर के चलना और फिर इस रिस्क से बाहर निकालने के लिए इसके 3 और बड़े बड़े पिलर खड़े कर देना कि इसमें न्यूट्रिला जो सोया चंक आता था उसमें न्यूट्रिला न्यूट्रिशटिकल्स, विटामिन डी, B12, कैल्शियम, आयरन, ओमेगा, विटामिन सी, जो कोलेजन प्रास और वेव प्रोटीन, आइसोवेदा, माने सब चीज़ें जो केमिकल एनिमल बेस्ड सिंथेटिक थे उनकी जगह नेचुरल विकल्प दे देना, क्योंकि ये कैसे कहते हैं ना प्रीमियम प्रोडक्ट है, एक अच्छा एबिटा वाला जो पोर्टफोलियो है पूरा का पूरा। फिर इसके अंदर पाम प्लांटेशन, उसमें तो कोई रिस्क ही नहीं है, उस बिजनेस को जोड़ देना। फिर उससे भी बड़ी बात हमने कहा कि कोई रिस्क हमें चाहिए ही नहीं, हमें लोगों का जो हम पर भरोसा है उसको आगे लेकर चलना है
जी।
तो पतंजलि का अंदर हमने जो हमारा नॉन जो फूड का बिजनेस है जिसमें प्रश्न केयर, हेयर केयर, डेंटल केयर, हमारे दंत कांति, केश कांति और एलोवेरा, तमाम तरह के जो हमारे ब्रांड्स हैं, बाकी मेडिसिन हमारी बीपी, शुगर, थायराइड, अस्थमा, आर्थराइटिस, जो हेपेटाइटिस आदि के लिए, वो उधर रहेंगे। इधर रुचि सोया में पूरा फूड पोर्टफोलियो हम ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं पतंजलि का, तो नॉन फूड पतंजलि में, फूड पूरा रुचि सोया में
जी।
ये हमारा एक पूरा लॉन्ग टर्म विजन है और इसको हमने अपने आरएसपी प्लान में भी डाला है और इसको हम एग्जीक्यूट भी करना शुरू कर देंगे लिस्टिंग के अगले दिन से ही
जी। रुचि सोया के फ्यूचर के बारे में बात करने से पहले आपने एक बहुत बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट एक विषय छेड़ा और दर्शक अगर इस बात को समझें जो स्वामी जी कह रहे हैं, अपने देश में 2/3 से अधिक खाद्य का तेल बाहर से आता है। यूक्रेन में समस्या हुई और बहुत लोगों ने, हमने एक स्टोरी की कि वहाँ से $1 बिलियन का सनफ्लावर ऑयल उससे भी अधिक देश में आता है, तो लोगों ने कहा अरे अपने देश में सब कुछ है, खाने का तेल नहीं है। स्वामी जी ये क्यों है? आपको खुद जानकारी ये जब मिली होगी तब आपको कितना अचंभा हुआ?
₹250 से ज़्यादा, ₹250 से ज़्यादा जो है, माने 300, 250, 300 रुपए तक MRP पहुंच गया सनफ्लावर का
जी।
घी के बराबर पहुंचने वाला
बिल्कुल।
और बात खाली सनफ्लावर की नहीं है, पाम ऑयल इंडोनेशिया, मलेशिया से आता है, तो बीच बीच में भारत के खिलाफ बकवास करते रहते हैं। कोई भी देश आत्मनिर्भरता के बिना आगे नहीं बढ़ सकता। तो
तेल में हम आत्मनिर्भर क्यों नहीं है?
तो इसमें किसी ने कोई बड़ी पहल की नहीं। पहली बार मोदी जी ने अभी 1200 करोड़ रुपए का ऑयल पाम मिशन लॉन्च किया है और खाद्य तेलों में आत्मनिर्भरता के लिए पूरा एक स्पेशल एक टास्क फोर्स बनाई है और इसमें बड़ी भूमिका पतंजलि रुचि सोया निभाएगा। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा कदम होगा। करीब 1.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए इस साल गया है, 1.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए फॉरेन करेंसी का नुकसान हुआ हमारा।
आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा। और आप जब कह रहे हैं कि बड़ी भूमिका निभाएंगे तो केवल पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन में निभाएंगे, क्या आपको लगता है कि कहीं उपजाने के लिए भी प्रयास करना पड़ेगा?
वही तो पाम प्लांटेशन का मतलब ही ये है कि यही पैदावार करना, यही फैक्ट्री लगाना और किसानों को जो ट्रेडिशनल खेती कर रहे थे उससे करीब डबल उनकी इनकम करना और इससे लाखों किसानों को और उससे जुड़े हुए लाखों कृषि मजदूरों को जोड़ना। ये बहुत बड़ा, लाखों एकड़ जमीन पर ये काम होगा। ऑलरेडी काम शुरू कर चुके सिद्धार्थ भाई।
स्वामी जी, कई लोग कहते हैं कि पाम ऑयल प्लांटेशंस जो हैं वो हमारी एनवायरनमेंट के लिए बड़े खराब हैं। इसका बड़ा विरोध होता है कि जंगल कट जाते हैं, जमीन खराब हो जाती है।
एनवायरनमेंट के नाम पर हमारे यहाँ पर कुछ ठलवे लोग हैं। ठलवे मतलब जिनके पास कोई काम धाम तो है नहीं और सोच है नहीं। मेरे से भी एक बार काफ़ी जो एग्रीकल्चर के नाम पर, एनवायरनमेंट के नाम पर काम करने वाले, मैंने कहा भाई इसका एग्रीकल्चर का कैसे नुकसान होगा, एक भी आप तर्क, तथ्य, युक्ति, प्रमाण के साथ बात करो। बड़े जी जंगल कट जाएंगे। मैंने कहा मूर्खो, भारत में एक भी ऐसी जगह नहीं है जहाँ जंगल काट करके पाम लगाए हो। ये तो इंडोनेशिया, मलेशिया की और दूसरे उन देशों की समस्या है जहां पर जंगल काट के पाम लगाए गए थे, तो इन्वायरमेंट की समस्या एक भी नहीं। दूसरी, इसके अंदर पानी कम लगता है, ड्रिप इरिगेशन से होता है और बंजर जमीन पर होता है,
बिल्कुल
उपजाऊ जमीन पर नहीं करते। और जो नॉर्मल खेती में जो तेल पैदा होता है सरसों का, मूंगफली का, जो भी नारियल का, कोई भी सोयाबीन का, उससे 4 गुना ज्यादा इसमें पैदावार होती है प्रति एकड़ में। तो पेड़ जो बंजर भूमि थी वहां पेड़ लगेंगे, 40 साल तक हरियाली रहेगी, इन्वायरमेंट का कहां इशू आ गया? तो कुछ लोग बिना सोचे समझे एक बात उठा ली कहीं विदेश से कि वहां जंगल काट के पाम लगाए गए थे,
विदेशी मॉडल ला के तो
और अब एक बात और बताना चाहता हूं, इसमें तो जो है इतना अच्छा काम किया है मोदी सरकार ने कि 3 साल तक उसमें क्रॉप नहीं आती, 3 साल के बाद उसमें फल आना शुरू होता है, 5 साल में पूरे फ्रूटिंग आ जाती है। अब जब वो फ्रूटिंग होती है उससे उसके बीच में जो किसान का नुकसान होता है उसकी भरपाई के लिए गवर्नमेंट सब्सिडी दे रही है किसानों को, बीज के लिए और खाद के लिए, नर्सरी के लिए। तो इतना बड़ा काम होगा आने वाले 5-10 सालों में, यहाँ पर एक बूंद भी बाहर से ना लाना पड़े, इस संकल्प के साथ हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। उसमें बड़ी भूमिका रुचि सोया निभाएगा। हमारा बहुत बड़ा सपना है सिद्धार्थ भाई, ठीक है, IPO ला रहे हैं, इससे डेट रिटायर कर देंगे, पाम प्लांटेशन में हमें मदद मिलेगी और हम अपने निवेशकों का हित साधते हुए इस एक बड़ा ब्रांड खाद्य तेलों में और फूड में FMCG में वर्ल्ड का सबसे बड़ा ब्रांड रुचि सोया पतंजलि बने, इस ध्येय के साथ हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं।
Zee Entertainment gained the most in about 6 months after its largest shareholder, Invesco, dropped the demand for an overhaul of the company's board. Invesco said it's decided not to pursue EGM to add 6 independent directors as Zee's merger with Sony will achieve the fund's aim of strengthening board oversight. Invesco, which along with OFI Global China Fund, holds a 17.88% stake in Zee Entertainment. However, said if the merger with Sony India is not completed as currently proposed, it does retain the right to requisition a fresh EGM. Byju's has kicked off the FIFA World Cup in style. As FIFA fever grips the world, India's edtech startup will be the official sponsor of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. Not only will Byju's be the first Indian firm to be associated with the World Cup, but also the first edtech brand to sponsor the global event. Now, Byju's will be able to access FIFA World Cup's mark, emblem and assets to create unique promotions and run them across the world. According to reports, Byju's is also planning to create engaging educational content for young fans as part of a multifaceted activation plan. We take a very quick break on that note. Back with more on the other side.
Putin hates Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, and there is reason for it. Rage over Putin's invasion of Ukraine couldn't be more evident than on social media. For example, a group of users have launched a Facebook page called Death to Putin. Angry messages, caricatures, or just simple hashtags of Death to Putin are widely circulated on social media, and Facebook didn't lift a finger over it. Instead, it rolled out a change in policies allowing for once banned content to be accepted under revised hate speech rules in the context of war. Meta has said that as a form of political expression, violent speech such as death to the Russian invaders would be allowed, but not credible calls for violence against Russian civilians. Posts calling for the death of Putin or Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko will also be allowed. The countries Meta now allows to call for Putin's death are mostly Russia's neighbors itself. The permitted list includes Armenia, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Georgia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Russia, Slovakia, and Ukraine. As a response, Russia took down Instagram, cutting off at least 80 million users from the service and also banned Facebook.
Просто это ужасно. Ну, это странно и ужасно. Это, наверное, самая популярная соцсеть вообще во всем мире. Не говоря уже то, что там в России, в Москве им пользуется, наверное, подавляющее большинство всех прогрессивных людей, скажем так. Все люди, которые прогрессивны, которые приносят, кстати, экономическую пользу, я думаю, что пользуются как раз-таки Фейсбуком и Инстаграмом. Поэтому это ужасно.
But as the Russia-Ukraine war moved to social media, Russian courts found it befitting to label Meta as an extremist platform. Barring WhatsApp, which still will function as it normally would, applications under Meta will now be labeled extremist in Russia. The Russian court has said that Meta deliberately allowed hate speech against Russians, which created an alternative reality in which any pro-Russian position was suppressed and hatred was incited. As a way to bypass these restrictions here, Russian citizens have been using VPNs.
Но это было ожидаемо, поэтому я скачал VPN и пользуюсь VPN.
Since February 24th, an average of 16,000...
Welcome back. You're with us here on Business Today. The crypto craze has taken India by storm, but in the wake of no regulations, is India being left behind in the tech evolution? While the government says its approach towards cryptos is a measured one, the opposition believes that technology is moving faster than the government's ability to frame policies. Listen in to an excerpt of a chat Rahul Kamal had with Jayant Sinha and Priyanka Chaturvedi at the Business Today Crypto Conclave.
A situation where there are differing estimates, but at least millions of people investing in different forms of crypto assets. And at this time, they don't know whether the investments that they've made are legal, illegal. We know that they're being taxed. They don't know what form the regulation will take. Is the government guilty of being late when it comes to regulating crypto assets? And can you give everyone sitting here watching you live on Business Today and India Today's time a sense of the thinking within government and how to deal with the reality of crypto assets?
The government's approach towards crypto is, I think, a very measured approach. There are two or three factors here that are very important that are well worth understanding as we plunge into this discussion today. First, crypto is legal in India, of course. That has been clarified by the Honorable Supreme Court. And through the measures that have been brought in the budget, we have also established a taxation framework for it. So that makes it absolutely legal. It makes it something that you can do, provided you follow all the laws and regulations. So that's point number one. Point number two, the global regulations and the global thinking around crypto is also evolving very quickly right now. And so before we pin down in India what the regulatory framework should be, we have to also keep in mind what is evolving at a global level as well, because we have to be aligned with that. If we start to move off in one direction and then we find it's not aligned with the global direction, then we will have to bring that back, and that's a problem. So right now it's a good position to take, which is let's establish what it is in terms of its legal status, let's establish its taxation status. But in terms of the regulation of use cases, because crypto, of course, can have many different use cases, the regulation of these different use cases should take into account what evolves from a global perspective. So that's point number two. Point number three is that the process of consultation has been on for a long time. Obviously, you know that the government had done a white paper on this some years ago. Then we've had at the Standing Committee on Finance, which, of course, as you know, I chair, a number of discussions as well, both formally and informally with members of the crypto industry. And then finally, the government now is in the process of establishing a white paper that will lay out the different use cases and how these different use cases should be regulated. But again, as I said, it's a good time to take a measured approach because the global picture also is evolving right now. And India, of course, uniquely so because of our capital controls, has to understand what is being implemented globally and then follow with appropriate
But let's take,
adjustments.
for example, what happened in Parliament yesterday, where the government said that gains made on one type of crypto asset cannot be offset against losses on another. Now, if this were stocks and if crypto is indeed an asset, then it's very clear you lose some on HCL, you can make that up on Infosys, etc. And therefore, it's only logical that something like that be extended to crypto. The moment, because there are a lot of young people here in the audience and watching on social media, digital, YouTube, etc. They get the sense that the government simply doesn't get it. I mean, they're looking at you and saying, don't these guys understand that this is very basic? How can they make such mistakes? And how does this even make sense?
Rahul, that's a very valid point. But I think you're jumping to a conclusion about a use case. When you say you want a set-off against gains that you're making here against losses elsewhere, you're already assuming that the use case is a use case where crypto is being considered as an asset class. right? And so when you have an asset class, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, whether it's mutual funds, and yes, you have set-offs. But that is already taking into account that this is a use case. Now, we are still, as I said, in the stage where we are thinking through what are the legitimate use cases. And therefore, once we have these legitimate use cases, they align with a global standard, then this is what the taxation treatment would be. But as I said, right now, what the different use cases are and what the tax treatment of these different use cases will be is still evolving. And right now, the government's position has been that it is not yet an asset class where it's going to get the benefits that other asset class which have set-offs are going to be. That seems to be the position the government has taken through the statements in Parliament
Priyanka
yesterday.
Chaturvedi, what do you make, sitting in the Shiv Sena, of the government's approach on regulating and taxing crypto assets? From what Jayanji is suggesting, the government seems to want to be careful, be calibrated, not rush in and come up with legislation, allow for the global policy framework to emerge, and not be in a rush to announce something, then have to roll it back.
So as far as global policy framework is concerned, there are many countries which have framed a policy. The policies are very forward-thinking, very dynamic in nature, and also understanding the need of the R basis, what is needed. You have a lot of young people who are invested in it, curious about it, are getting employment through it. So it becomes important that we show the kind of speed that is needed for something like this. And we are seeing how technology is moving faster than our ability to frame policies. So always having this cautious position and sitting and waiting for the others to make the first move will only end up damaging a lot of prospect that we have as Indians.
What do you think the government should be doing? If you were in power, how would you handle the current challenges on regulation and taxation?
So I find this very weird that you do not have a cryptocurrency bill introduced in the parliament yet, but you have decided you are going to tax it. As per what my understanding is and what I understood from him, he said that we are considering it legal, but we haven't decided the use case, where does it fit in? Is it an asset? Is it something else? How do we compare it with other assets? So you cannot have a tax introduced, you cannot have a GST, you cannot have a TDS, and not know where cryptocurrency stands. And again, legality, illegality is also a grey zone right now. Exchange also is a grey zone right now because RBI has taken a totally divergent point of view. So where is the convergence? The convergence needs to come from multiple stakeholder conversations. And again, we are very late into this. Only when Prime Minister spoke about it recently did it come to the Finance Committee, and Finance Committee has started discussing it. Supreme Court had already uplifted that ban. So till now, they have been functioning in a grey zone. The regulation is self-regulated. They're managing it on their own. But we need to create frameworks. We need to have a dynamic framework to be able, and I think the need is to regulate, not to ban, not to discourage. You can have higher thresholds of investment, but you cannot stop a technology whose time has come. And that, I think, is something that we as parliamentarians need to understand, what the young is looking towards us and expecting out of us. And they seem to be on it, understanding it. So maybe they should be important part of the conversation.
And here's what else is making news in the corporate world. Hospitality unicorn Oyo's much-awaited IPO of 8,340 crore rupees is likely to suffer further listing delay as well as reduction in offer size. This comes in the face of the current global crisis emerging out of the Russia-Ukraine war situation. The beating tech stocks have taken in global and domestic markets are also a reason for the delay. Maruti Suzuki India has appointed Hisashi Takeuchi as the MD and CEO in place of Kenichi Ayukawa. The appointment is with effect from April 22 and will last for 3 years till March 25. Incumbent Kenichi Ayukawa will continue as a whole-time director, designated as executive vice chairman till September 30th this year to facilitate a smooth transition. Income tax officials continue their search at various premises of Hero MotoCorp and its CMD Pavan Munjal for the second straight day. This after the department continued its searches on the Hinanandani Group's Mumbai office and other properties in connection with the foreign assets case. The Board of Infrastructure Major Larsen & Toubro approved long-term borrowings of up to 10,000 crore rupees. The long-term borrowings include refinancing through external commercial borrowings, term loans, NCDs or non-convertible debentures, and any other instrument as may be appropriate, the company said in a regulatory filing. And that's where we leave it on the show today. Thanks so much for watching.